Hi, Michel. I always wondered, is a puppet theater a heterotopia?
Uh, you mean because in my essay of Other Spaces, I refer to the theater as a heterotopia, similar to the cinema and the garden?
Exactly. Here's what you say. The heterotopia is capable of juxtaposing in a single real place several spaces, several sites that are in themselves incompatible. Thus it is that the theater brings onto the rectangle of the stage, one after the other, a whole series of places that are foreign to one another.
Yes, I remember. That's from the lecture, isn't it? I mean, from the lecture I gave in 1967. Uh, but it was only in 1984 and I released it for publication shortly before my death.
Exactly.
Um, did you know that this lecture was based on a short radio presentation I gave in December 1966? And already in this radio piece, I talked about the theater, the cinema, and the garden. Well, some architects heard this and then invited me to elaborate on this further.
So it wasn't really your topic at all?
Let's put it this way, I didn't mean it all that seriously, so I found it somewhat funny when they got back to me. However, I used the term before in the introduction to the order of things, but in a completely different context. There, heterotopia referred to strange spaces of thought.
The Chinese encyclopedia?
Yes, but I had something completely different in mind when I did the radio piece. I rather shamelessly drew on an idea by Gaston Bachelard. In his book on the poetics of space, Bachelard explored the imagined spaces with which writers and artists express their subjectivity. Old houses, new huts, and hiding places of all kinds. Um, in the radio piece, I took this up in the sense of specific spaces that stand in opposition to the social spaces of the everyday.
So, how did you come up with the theater in this context? After all, it is a rather well established form of social space.
Uh, Hold on a second. First of all, the radio piece is about counter sites. Here is what I said about them. The children know such counter sites, such localized utopias very well. That's the garden, of course. That's the attic, or rather the Indian tent in the attic. And this is, on Thursday afternoons, the parents' bed. On this bed, you discover the sea because you can swim between the blankets. But the bed is also heaven because you can jump on the springs.
Oh, yes, I know such sites from my own childhood as well. Not so much the parents' bed, but the side under the stairs or a table. I like that you call them localized utopias.
That's, in a sense, the core of the whole story. That's what I wanted to get at. Which localized utopias exist in society, how they come into being, how do they function, who uses them, and who is responsible for them. The problem was only that on a purely conceptual level, uh, localized and utopia are mutually exclusive. Utopia means something like not localized or non-place. And that's why, taking up a term from medicine, by the way, I spoke of heterotopia, of foreign or simply other spaces, of real places beyond all other places. For example, gardens, cemeteries, asylums, brothels, prisons, the villages of the Club Méditerranée, and many others.
I see here the connection to your other works, to the history of the asylum, of the prison. In the 1970s, you even ran a project on the history of the hospital as a remarkable healing machine. But to come back to the puppet theater, is it also a heterotopia in this sense?
But of course, Bachelard already knew that it is the old, the long forgotten puppet that fills the attic with poetry and thus turns it into a real counterside. And for me, the puppet theater, like any other theater, also has the ability to present several sides, one after the other, in a single real place, in order to hold up a healing mirror to the society. But that is not all. The puppet theater also breaks with established notions of time. It removes the boundaries between, between life and death.
That's quite interesting. In this respect, the puppet theater is not only a heterotopia, but it also establishes a heterochrony, an entirely different regime of temporality. Thank you, Michel.
Uh, well, after all, perhaps it wasn't a coincidence that I published this text shortly before my death.